In 1991, a man walked into Casino Gran Madrid with nothing but a notebook and a theory. He wasn't there to gamble. He didn't touch a chip. He barely looked at the money. Instead, he stared at a roulette wheel for hours, just watching, spin after spin. To the staff, he looked like a lunatic, another middle-aged man chasing ghosts under casino lights. But this man was different. His name was Gonzalo Garcia Pelayo, and he wasn't there to chase luck. He believed in something else. That the wheel, this iconic symbol of chance, wasn't random. That if you looked closely enough, long enough, you could find a crack in the system. Not a cheat or a glitch, just reality. A flaw in the machine that nobody else had noticed. Over the next year, he and his family would run a quiet operation across Europe, recording spins, logging data, finding patterns, and then striking. With surgical precision, they exploited roulette tables across Madrid, Amsterdam, Vienna, and even Las Vegas, walking away with millions in legal winnings with just math and logic, and forced the entire industry to change how roulette wheels were made, maintained, and watched. This is the story of how a music producer from Spain exposed one of the greatest illusions in gambling and built a system that brought the house to its knees. Gonzalo Garcia Pelayo never planned on becoming a professional gambler. In fact, he hated gambling. He was a music producer, a filmmaker, a guy who spent more time arguing about Nietzsche than thinking about casinos. But he had one thing most gamblers didn't: patience, and a dangerous curiosity. He always believed that nothing in the world was truly random. Not music, not politics, not life. Everything had a pattern. You just had to look long enough. And one day, he found himself thinking about roulette. Not like a gambler hoping to get lucky does. He was thinking like a machine. See, the roulette wheel isn't magic. It's a physical object. It spins, it wears down, it develops friction. And that means, maybe, some numbers are more likely to come up than others. Maybe the game isn't completely fair. Gonzalo started going to Casino Gran Madrid, not to play, just to watch. He sat there for hours with a pen and notebook, recording every spin, page after page, night after night. Nobody noticed, nobody cared. After all, what kind of lunatic spends weeks tracking roulette numbers by hand? But then he took that notebook home, entered the data into a simple computer program, and the results weren't random. A small set of numbers were hitting more often than they should have. And the deeper he dug, the more obvious it became. The wheel was broken. And that meant the game could be beaten. The numbers weren't supposed to mean anything. They were supposed to be noise, but they weren't. On his screen, Gonzalo began to notice a pattern forming, faint at first. Just 4 numbers showing up slightly more often than they should have: 6, 8, 17, and 29. It wasn't a big difference, barely noticeable unless you were counting every spin by hand over thousands of trials. But Gonzalo had been. Still, he didn't get excited. He knew better. He spent the next several nights going back over the logs, checking for human error, double-checking inputs, looking for anything that might have skewed the data. Wrong timestamps, duplicate entries, recording bias? He ruled them out one by one. But the results stayed the same. The same numbers kept hitting, not by chance, but because something beneath the surface was pushing them there. That's when it hit him. This wasn't just random variation. This was bias. Real, physical bias. Not a theory anymore. Cold, recorded fact. He'd collected over 3,000 spins across multiple tables. That was enough to silence coincidence. And once he accepted that the wheel itself might be flawed, Gonzalo's approach changed. He no longer looked at the roulette floor like a gambler. He looked at it like an engineer. He began labeling each wheel by its table number, grouping data. Table 3 consistently showed a spike in 8, 17, 34. Table 6 was a wash, no meaningful deviations. Table 9 leaned hard towards 6 and 29. The patterns weren't loud, but they were stable, and that meant they could be predicted. He cross-referenced wheels with dealers, times of day, and even spin directions. Some combinations showed stronger skews than others. This wasn't just the wheel, it was the friction of the ball, the wear on the frets, the way the croupier spun it that night. Slowly, a map began to form. Not of a casino, but of a system, one he could read and control. He kept the notebook close, the software even closer. He didn't tell anyone what he was seeing. Not yet, because now came the part that couldn't be done from behind a screen. It was time to test it. So one night, alone, Gonzalo returned to Casino Gran Madrid. Same floor, same tables, but this time, no notebook, no pretense, just a pocket of chips and a plan. He walked past the blackjack tables, past the tourists huddled at the slot machines, and took a seat at table 3, the one with the clearest bias in his data. He didn't hesitate. He placed 5 chips on 5 numbers, the ones the data told him were weak spots. The croupier spun the wheel. The ball danced, slowed, and landed on 29, one of his numbers. Not a jackpot, but enough. He reset, bet again. Another hit, this time on 8. Not every spin paid out, but the percentages were holding. He stayed for an hour, stayed calm, no change in expression, no increase in bet size. He acted like someone with a gut feeling, not a formula. Then he cashed out, quietly. He left with a few €100 in profit. Not enough to draw attention, but enough to prove the bias was real. The system worked, and now the real game was about to begin. Gonzalo had proof. The system wasn't just a theory anymore. It had been tested, quietly, carefully, and it worked. But there was a problem. One man working alone couldn't take full advantage of it. He couldn't be in 2 casinos at once. He couldn't track every wheel. And more importantly, he couldn't win too much too fast, or they'd catch on. So he scaled. The first person he brought in was Ivan, his oldest son. He didn't need convincing. Ivan saw the numbers, understood the logic immediately. He helped refine the software, cleaned up the interface, made it faster, sharper, easier to update in real time. Then came the others. Siblings, cousins, in-laws. Not gamblers, just people Gonzalo trusted. He trained them one by one, not how to win, but how to follow the system without attracting attention. When to sit, when to leave, how to act like a clueless tourist. Their job wasn't to be flashy. Their job was to blend in. The operation grew quickly. Some would handle data collection, watching specific wheels, recording thousands of spins by hand. Others would analyze the logs, look for bias, and confirm it before any real money went in. Only a few were allowed to place bets. They were called the hit team. They moved between casinos in different cities, always rotating, always under the radar. They'd show up, play a few hours, take what they could, and vanish before the casino had time to realize what happened. No patterns, no loyalty to any table. Madrid, Valencia, Malaga. Then France, Austria, Holland. Within months, the Pelayos were running a coordinated system across multiple countries, tracking over a dozen wheels, syncing their results, and hitting only when the bias was confirmed. The money started piling up, not in jackpots or giant wins, but in steady, consistent cash-outs. €2,000 here, €4,000 there, night after night. And still, nobody at the casinos knew how they were doing it. To outsiders, it looked like a group of lucky tourists. But inside the operation, it was precise, cold, surgical. Gonzalo wasn't playing games anymore. He was running a system, and every spin was another calculation in a machine he had built from scratch. But the more they won, the more eyes turned toward them, because eventually, someone inside the casino started asking the right questions. And that's when things got complicated. The system was perfect, but Gonzalo knew one thing: perfection doesn't last when people start noticing. And by 1993, people were definitely noticing. Not the public, they had no idea yet, but inside the casinos, the whispers had started. The group was winning too often, always calm, always quiet. Different players, different nights, but somehow the results were the same. A few dealers flagged it, then floor managers. And then came the first ban. Gonzalo was asked to leave Casino Gran Madrid, no reason given. A week later, Ivan was blocked at the door. Then Christian. By the end of that month, they were blacklisted from every major casino in the country. Not because they cheated, not because they broke any rule, but because they had proven something the casinos weren't ready yet to admit. The wheel, the symbol of randomness and chance, wasn't fair, and somebody finally had the math to show it. The industry didn't want to fight. They wanted them gone, quietly. But Gonzalo wasn't about to quit. He scaled. The core family went dark. In their place, he trained a second team. Friends, trusted contacts, college kids, bartenders, anyone with discipline and a clean name. Internally, they called them submarinos, or the silent ones. The data stayed in-house, but the hands placing the bets? Ghosts. With this setup, the operation expanded again. Amsterdam, Vienna, Monte Carlo, each city a new battlefield, each roulette table a new machine to be tested, tracked, and broken. The process never changed. One team recorded thousands of spins, another analyzed the data. Then the submarinos flew in, placed the bets, collected the winnings, and vanished. No one ever stayed in the same casino more than 2 nights. The profits weren't massive jackpots. They were consistent extractions, small surgical wins that added up fast. And still, they weren't technically doing anything wrong, but the industry had had enough. In Spain, the bans became coordinated. Gonzalo wasn't just ejected from Madrid, he was blacklisted by name along with every family member across the country. Then, Gonzalo decided to go to Vegas, the epicenter, the capital of gambling. If the system worked there, it would mean one thing: it could work anywhere. He flew in with a small team and a quiet plan. No press, no cameras. But Las Vegas wasn't Europe. The wheels were cleaner, the staff sharper, and the surveillance constant. Every table had a camera, every player had a file. The system still worked, but not with the same power. Gonzalo realized something. To truly beat Vegas, he would have to live there, study the casinos daily, track the wheels long-term, build a base. And that wasn't his war. Vegas wasn't a glitch to be exploited. It was an industry built to adapt and swallow threats whole. So the team returned to Europe and shifted tactics. And so Gonzalo decided to do the unthinkable. He took the casinos to court. Lawsuits were filed, long hearings, quiet press coverage. The argument was simple. If you want us to play by your rules, then you don't get to throw us out just because we followed them better than you expected. The legal process dragged on for years, but in 2004, Spain's Supreme Court ruled in their favor. The bans were declared illegal. The Pelayos had not cheated. They used only observation, logic, and public information. The ruling wasn't just a victory for Gonzalo, it was a public admission that roulette was not a perfect system. And with that, the story exploded. Headlines across the country, TV interviews, documentaries. Gonzalo Garcia Pelayo, once a quiet music producer and part-time philosopher, became a national celebrity. Not for gambling, but for outsmarting the system. He gave interviews, broke it all down, told Spain how his family, working from their kitchen tables and computers, exposed one of the oldest games in the world. And then he did something even bolder. He published everything. The story, the data, the math. In 2003, he released La Fabulosa Historia de los Pelayos. Not just a memoir, but a blueprint. If the industry was going to shut him out, he'd burn the whole system down. Let everyone see how the house was never unbeatable. Let everyone know what the casinos had tried to hide for decades. The truth was out, and now there was no going back. After the lawsuits, the bans, the media storm, Gonzalo Garcia Pelayo didn't retire. He just moved on. He'd spent years dismantling one of the oldest games in the world. He'd built a family-run syndicate that outsmarted casinos across Europe. But the system couldn't last forever. Casinos replaced wheels more often. Surveillance got smarter. Word of the Pelayo method spread. The edge shrank, and Gonzalo knew when to walk away. Not defeated, but finished. The game had changed, so he changed with it. He moved into poker, then into sports betting, then eventually back to where it all started, film and media. He directed movies, produced television, even ran his own record label again. But nothing ever compared to those years in the casino underworld. The secrecy, the adrenaline, the precision. It wasn't about luck. It never had been. It was about finding a system inside the chaos and bending it just far enough to win. Today, the Pelayo story lives on in books, documentaries, and university lectures. His family remains one of the only groups in modern history to legally and consistently beat roulette at scale. Not once, not on one lucky night, but for years. Without cheating, without hiding, just with patience, math, and control. Gonzalo didn't just beat the house, he exposed it. And once he did, he walked away on his own terms. Hope you enjoyed the story. If you're into real-life cases of people who outsmarted casinos, hacked the system, or just broke the rules without breaking the law, there's a lot more waiting on the channel. Make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. It helps more than you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.